I don't think that Carson Beck can beat the Ole Miss defense. I just don't. Ole Miss's offense should outgain Miami's offense. There should not be a doubt on that. You look at what they've been able to do. They've come together as a group, and they've had to battle more adversity than I'd say any other college football team who's made it to this point in a season has ever had to go through. For teams like LSU, they cannot afford to wait for Ole Miss to play out their season. That win for Ole Miss over Georgia changed the complete dynamic of what this portal class looks like.
Welcome to the show. Today we have Matt DiGregorio, who is on boots on the ground here for the Fiesta Bowl between Ole Miss and Miami. Miami comes in as a 3.5-point favorite into this game Thursday night at 7:30. Just a couple things to touch on before we talk to you, Matt. Trinidad Chambliss, established elite quarterback now. Chambliss has passed for 3,600 yards, which is sixth most in the country. Chambliss only threw 3 interceptions all year, and this offense averages 500 total yards per game. That's second best in the country. And they also average 315 passing yards per game, which is third most in the country. Kawan Lacey's having an incredible season. Lacey ran for 1,400 yards, which is third most in the country. Also rushed for 23 touchdowns, second most in the country. Lacey's coming into the game with 8 straight games with a rushing touchdown and only had 1 game this season without a touchdown. The Ole Miss offensive line went into the whole game without a sack against Georgia. They lead the SEC in sacks given up with only 18 in 14 games. The Ole Miss offense heads into this game rolling, Matt. What should we be looking at in this matchup?
Yeah, Nick, I think when you look at these two sides, they play such spectacular football on the outside. Obviously, Ruben Bain is one of the most dangerous pass rushers in the all of college football. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the National Football League draft. He's a guy you always have to be on the lookout for. So you got to at least try to get the double team on him on almost every single play. But you mentioned Trinidad Chambliss's ability to avoid the turnover and avoid the sack. He's a guy who he's not really turned the football over this year. And when he's been in there, he has done a really incredible job at moving the football and getting it out of harm's way to avoid one of those sacks. Right? He runs out of the pocket. He'll make Lamar Jackson type plays to avoid pressure. It's just an established skill that he has continued to nurture and grow throughout the past month and a half. Really, you've started to really notice it when you're playing these really good defenses like Georgia was last week. I think for Ole Miss to have success in this game, obviously you got to keep the football. You can't turn the football over. They did turn the football over once against Georgia, and it cost them. Ole Miss's offense should outgain Miami's offense. There should not be a doubt on that. But can Ole Miss limit what Miami poses on the edge defensively? They got 2 really good players off the edge. Their defensive backfield is loaded. Keontae Scott is a guy who's just magical back there in the DB field. Like, there is a lot of things going into this that you have to look at, even as an offense who averages 500 yards a game. Like, this is a Miami defense that has led them to this point. I don't think that Carson Beck can beat the Ole Miss defense. I just don't. So you got to look at it and you got to say, all right, if you're Miami, the key to success in this game is winning defensively and limiting to Ole Miss to less than 30 points. If you can do that, you're going to give yourself a chance. If Ole Miss gets to 30 points, it's really going to be difficult for you to win the football game. So if you're Mario Cristobal, that's what you got to look at. I think Ole Miss, they feel really, really good with this defense. The defensive line is spectacular. The defensive line was tremendous against Gunnar Stockton. It felt like they were just deflecting the ball on every other play. And Gunnar Stockton has that dog in him. I don't know that Carson Beck necessarily has that same kind of dog in him. He's not, I don't want to say he's as tough, but I really don't think he is. Like, this is going to be a grown man football game. It's going to be one of those physical football games that you see all year.
Yeah, and Matt, you cover this team all year. So at the beginning of the year, it didn't really look like this Ole Miss team was projected to go this far, at least from the outside view. What was the process that changed the trajectory of this team this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year for Ole Miss. Last year was supposed to be the all-in year that you go and win the national title, and they were good enough to win the national title last year. Last year's team had I think, tremendously more talent than this year's team. You look at what they've been able to do. They've come together as a group, and they've had to battle more adversity than I'd say any other college football team who's made it to this point in a season has ever had to go through. Your head coach leaves, you have a new head coach come in. Your assistant coaches are literally in a different city with a different team every single day, flying back and forth. It's unprecedented. You've never seen anything like this in the history of the sport. A lot of that has to do with the calendar. I know we'll talk about that later, but when you have people going back and forth, it's really difficult to focus. If you're a wide receiver and your wide receiver coach is not in the building and you're learning from a new coach who was not in the system throughout the year, that changes the dynamic of things, whether they want to admit it or not. I mean, it helps that Charlie Weiss is still in there as the play caller. But I think that the team has rallied around this almost underdog mentality, saying the coaches did not want us because they didn't think that we could do it, right? Lane Kiffin left, and he would not have left if he believed this team truly could win a national title. And I think it goes back to your question. At the beginning of the year, this was not supposed to be an anything special team, and they've turned into the most special team that we've ever seen in the history of the program. The first team in program history to win 13 games, to even win 12 games. Now they're 13-1 with an opportunity to go to the national title. They've rallied around it, and a lot of the players who were around last year, and there's not many of them, but a lot of the players who are playing key factors this year, who were around last year, have noticed that this group is just more relaxed. They have like this silent confidence about them that they're going to get the job done. Last year's team put a lot of pressure on themselves. So this year I think you're kind of seeing that them embrace the mentality, saying nobody thought that we could do it, and we're going to do it and prove it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and even to talk about that calendar, like you had said, the transfer portal's open, but Ole Miss is still in the college football playoff. Running back Quan Lacey the other day announced he'll be returning to Ole Miss. What does the calendar look like for these players in the next few weeks, even if they're still in the national championship?
Quite possibly the most important question you'll ask me. Yeah, you've seen it here, and this is the reason why I say that is because when Lane Kiffin left for LSU, he had in his mind that he was going to take a majority of the Ole Miss roster with him and build through the recruits that he would bring in. Excuse me, if and when he made it to Baton Rouge. Well, he had a pretty good recruiting class. Problem is, the transfer portal has not gone the way that he's thought that it would. I mean, he was pouted as whatever. He was called the portal king for a reason, right? You brought him in with the amount of money that he is getting from LSU. He claimed that was the biggest reason, was because the NIL was quote unquote just different. Like they were willing to spend more money than anyone else in the country, right? But so far, all the Ole Miss players continue. The entire defense has basically said that I'm coming back. And within the last 48 hours, they have all said we're coming back. You have Suntarian Perkins, who's a guy who could be a first-round pick in the NFL. He's coming back. Jamarius Brown on the defensive line. Prince William Mielen on the defensive line. I mean, Jalen Braxton, one of your top DBs. All these guys are announcing that they're coming back. And then you look offensively. You said Kewan Lacey. He announced last night that he's coming back. Trinidad Chambliss, if he gets his waiver, he's going to come back. I mean, the band's just coming back together. Obviously, they're going to have some questions at wide receiver. I believe Winston Watkins, true freshman out of IMG Academy, he's probably going to be the lone big name that goes to LSU still with Lane. I've kind of noticed some things there with him that seem like he's out the door. And Austin Simmons, obviously, he's going to Missouri. But other than that, like key contributors, you're not really losing anybody, and you're bringing in. You've already signed, as of right now, this conversation. You have the number one portal class, so you're taking a top four team in the country right now, Final Four team, and you've added the number one portal class and kept all your talent. Like it's remarkable what they've done, and the reason why the calendar is so big here is because for teams like LSU, they cannot afford to wait for Ole Miss to play out their season. That win for Ole Miss over Georgia changed the complete dynamic of what this portal class looks like. If Ole Miss had lost, I think there's a chance that you see players like Kewan Lacey maybe enter the portal and see what else is out there. The issue is when the season's over, that portal window, I mean, not for them, but the portal window for the rest is going to be closed. So everybody is going to have already, for the most part, picked their destination. So Kewan's left getting whatever left is open, which you don't really want. And for LSU, you can't afford to wait, as I said. Ole Miss at the end of this run, and whenever it is, if it's on Thursday against Miami or if it's in on 2 Mondays in January 19th in the national title, they will have a 12 to 16 day window there to transfer. And if they choose to do that, then they'll have the opportunity so, and they'll have to go to a program that has somehow not addressed the needs, whether it's based off of a verbal agreement that you previously had, or they just did not land the player that they wanted in the portal. And I just don't see a player at a school who's in the Final Four taking a risk and jumping ship from a team that you know can do it to go to an unknown commodity unless it has to do with just pure money. And a lot of these programs who have not addressed the needs that they need do not really have the capital to invest in a player of the caliber of the players that are on these Final Four teams.
Yeah, Matt, and I think what makes this even more remarkable about this Ole Miss team is the coaching situation with Pete Golding. Heading into this game, Charlie Weiss Jr. is still going to call their offense, like you mentioned, but what exactly does this coaching situation look like as Pete Golding is a defensive guy first?
Yeah, the coaching situation's fascinating, and you said that. I think you got to keep all they've talked about. This is not. I don't. I think we're playing a little too much into how much this coaching situation actually matters, and I'll tell you why. Pete Golding has mentioned time and time again, all he has to do is keep the train on the tracks. Everything is done. He has not had to do much except just make sure the train just keeps going forward. Everything that Lane Kiffin put in place at the beginning of the season is still in place. Charlie Weiss Jr. is still calling the offense. The position coaches who are still there are still there. The position coaches who have come in, they're just replacing and continuing to do the same thing that those previous position coaches were installing. So when you have the same kind of people in place and the play callers haven't changed, you still got Pete Golding on the defense. Brian Brown is still there with the defense. Joe Judge is still there with the quarterbacks. You have Charlie Weiss still in his play calling capacity with Ole Miss. So none of that has changed, right? So all you're really doing is changing the guy who's making the decisions whether you go for it or not. And Pete Golding was very heavily involved in those decisions. Lane Kiffin has talked about how he used to click over to Pete and say, "All right, what do you think here?" Right? He was the last voice. The difference is Pete Golding is the last voice this time, and he's the one who has to make that final call. Do I burn a timeout here? Do I do the XYZ? That's really the only difference that you have right now, because everything has been installed. Everything that this team has already done has been put in place from the beginning of the season. The train is on the tracks. You just got to make sure that you're steering the train a little bit to make sure that it doesn't divert somewhere it doesn't need to go. So when you look at the coaching situation, yeah, I do think that it is a little overblown. But the reason why we talk about it so much is because it's unprecedented. I mean, Golding has talked about how at Alabama during some of his runs as the DC, yeah, they had people on the staff who had two different jobs. But I mean, when you're having two different jobs and you got a guy like Charlie Weiss who's in Baton Rouge for half the day, and then Ole Miss is flying him back up to Oxford for half the day, I mean that does. I mean, it has to hurt in some way, shape, or form. At worst, it's just an oddity that you just can't wrap your mind around. So yeah, I think there's two sides to it. Like the odd nature of things. Yes, that's definitely something. But will it actually affect the play on the field? I don't believe so.
So, last question about this Ole Miss team, Matt. Maybe next year this question takes effect. What do you expect this Ole Miss team to look like and to perform with all these assistants like Charlie Weiss, possibly Joe Judge, and a lot of these guys gone?
Yeah, so they're bringing in a familiar name in John David Baker, who is the ECU offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, a guy who's very familiar with the state of Mississippi, specifically with Ole Miss. So I think that, listen, and him and Pete Golding have a good relationship. So when you look at that, like John David Baker could take over the offense right now, and I think that they'd still have success. Maybe not the same success that Charlie Weiss had, but when you look at the personnel that's coming back here, JDB is going to have no problem at putting together a scheme that is one of the best in the country. I still think that they're capable of averaging 500 yards per game. They'll bring in extra wideouts. I mean, yeah, you probably won't have Daquan Wright, your tight end. You probably won't. You're definitely not going to have Trey Wallace because he'll be gone. The Penn State transfer. You won't probably have Winston Watkins, but like outside of that, like really, I mean, when you have Kewan Lacey and Trinidad Chambliss back there, if Chambliss is given his waiver, not much is going to change. I think running backs coach, people will say, all right, big deal. And it is. But when you got people coming in and you got guys coming in like Frank Wilson, who is widely considered one of the best running back coaches in the country. He was just LSU's interim head coach. He is going to be replacing as the running backs coach. He comes in and just takes over with Kewan Lacey. He's working with Kewan right now. So they're already growing a relationship in the most pressure packed situations that they'll play in. So yeah, I think that there's a good opportunity here for Ole Miss just to continue this sort of dominance, even with some new coaches in the building.
Last thing here, Matt, before we let you go, I know you've been all around the country reporting on this Ole Miss team throughout the year. Bring us into the media world. What does your life look like with this Fiesta Bowl on Thursday, and kind of fill us in on what you've been doing for Ole Miss recently?
It's a crazy question, right? Because NFL season's just wrapped up with the Saints. They were on the road the last couple of weeks, so I had the kind of less responsibilities with them, and Mississippi State wrapped up their bowl season on January 2nd, so kind of done with them. And Southern Miss they wrapped up their bowl game in the New Orleans Bowl prior to Christmas. So yeah, most of the focus has been on Ole Miss. They have really taken precedent. The entire state's really rallied around them. They when they did not get to the SEC title game, you knew that they were going to be hosting a playoff game, so you knew that was the next game on tap, right? So you start getting ready for that, and that game was up in Oxford, and man, what an environment that was! The largest crowd in the history of a sporting event in the state of Mississippi. Was up there for that, and I mean, just a really awesome environment for a state that sometimes does not get the attention that it deserves with its athletics. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised with just the turnout and the environment for that game. One of the best environments that I've ever been to at a sporting event. Coming back, they go to the Sugar Bowl right down the street from where I live and where I work out of. And that week, I go to the Sugar Bowl every year, and that week was tremendous. The Sugar Bowl does an unbelievable job. Their media days are widely considered the best. They open up every single player for questions, which is very Super Bowl-esque. You don't really see that at the college level. So it's a really neat opportunity for us to get the stories that we want to get. So that was cool. The game obviously is spectacular. And then when they win, obviously you're working almost 20 plus hours a day. I mean, I haven't taken a day off now. I know it's been over a week, and probably if they win this game on Thursday, then I probably won't have another one off for another week and a half here. So I mean, it's yeah, when you talk about busy schedules, it's about as busy as it gets. I flew out here to Arizona yesterday. And so I'll be out here through Saturday. So I'll have, stuff all day today, and then into the game. And then, yeah, it's a grind, but it's a fun grind, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing more than I'd rather be doing. Since I've taken the job in Mississippi, I have not covered anything quite like this. And no one has. This is the farthest that any Mississippi team has ever gone in this college football playoff era. So to be able to document this is really special.
Yeah, Matt. Well, thanks for opening up with us and coming on the show. Maybe we'll see you again for this national
Yeah,
championship in Miami, but thanks for joining us, buddy.
absolutely appreciate it, Nick.